Okay, so we are live. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. My name is Traei. Today here is February 9th, and it is Chinese New Year. So just stopping here to wish everybody happy Chinese New Year. Um, I am the founder and author of Her Stories Untold, a global book project sharing different empowering and inspiring stories of women around the globe from all walks of life. The reason this project was created was because I realized that there were so many women out there that have stories to share, journeys that have taken, but not realizing their significance and importance. This project is open to all women and transgender women in the globe from all walks of life. So if you have a story of your journey, if you know of someone that has a special journey of how you became whom you are and where you are today, please do check out www.herstoriesuntold.com. Again, the purpose of this global book project is to empower, uplift, and inspire women from all over the globe from all walks of life. Before we begin our talk today, I want to acknowledge that the land on which I live and work is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kwikwetlem Nations and lies within the shared traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Gadigal, Musqueam, Squamish, and Kikik and Stolo First Nations. And I want to introduce to everybody here, this is Barbara Feigin. So meet Barbara, a refugee from Nazi Germany and her American dream, a journey from fascism to freedom. Now, we're going to go over and cover, I guess, as much as we can, but in essence, this book that Barbara has written is about her and her family's escape from Nazi Germany to find freedom and opportunity in the United States. This whole journey is completely fascinating because I read it and it's just very empowering. And most importantly, I want to invite Barbara here to share about, her contributions to building the American culture, and how she became an advertising executive, which is very rare for women in the 1960s, what they called the Mad Men era, and then her becoming this nationally recognized
Oh,
authority. Yeah, yeah. So welcome here, Barbara.
wait a minute.
Hi. Oh, is everything okay? Oh, we had a little bit of a technical fail. So just stepping off momentarily, I think there's some connection issues. Oh, we're welcoming Barbara back here right now. Perfect.
Oh,
There
so
we
sorry.
Not a
Had a
problem.
little technical glitch there. Very sorry. Here
Uh,
I am.
but again, that's a gentle reminder that technology is amazingly awesome, but at the same time, these things happen in real life to real people.
Right, right.
So
Carry on.
yeah, I was glamoring over how rare opportunities or that you were shattering glass ceilings in the 1960s and then becoming a nationally recognized authority on the social norms of the American people. Essentially, this Barbara here, your expertise has brought countless major media appearances over the years, and then, just all these business insights and empowering journey. So please, Barbara, I
Well,
guess
thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
thank you for being here. Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to ask you, why do you want to share your story? Like what propelled you to start this whole journey?
Well, those are two different questions. So let me take the first one first. Why do I want to share my story? As you said, I was a refugee from Nazi Germany. My father was Jewish, my mother was Lutheran, and I, at age 2.5, three of us, fled for our lives in July of 1940, fled from Nazi persecution. And I think today so many young people and older people as well don't really know anything much about the Holocaust, don't really understand the horror and the terror and really just the awfulness of what that whole era was all about. So one of the things that I hope I can accomplish with my book is to educate uh, another generation through a personal story. And as you're uh, really doing with your whole project, I think personal stories sometimes resonate in a way that just reading a history book doesn't. So I want to be able to educate people, uh, to really understand what the Holocaust was, what its impact was, and what kind of suffering people really had. My father's parents were murdered in the concentration camps. How a family can be so uh, disrupted is a mild word, really torn away from everything that they know. And as my father said, we came 3/4 of the way around the world into the unknown with nothing, nothing. The clothes on our backs, what my parents could carry, including me. They brought a tent because they had no idea where we would live, and they thought if necessary we could live in this tent. And for the family, my father had $10.50. And so I want people to know about this and to understand about this and to understand deeply the kind of personal implications this kind of terror and horror can have. So that's one thing. And the second thing that I hope I accomplish with it is that I hope I inspire people. My mother taught me when I was very young, impressed upon me, uh, to dream big, work hard, and never ever quit. And that's been sort of the guiding principle of my own life. And I hope when people learn about my life, again, from a personal vantage point, it's sort of easier to understand than reading about such things in a history book. I hope they're inspired to dream big themselves. I think at any point in our lives, uh, there are times, when you kind of don't know what's next, what you're going to do. Dream big. Go for it. Might be a little scary sometimes, but go for it. Try and keep at it. And eventually, hopefully, your dream will turn into reality. So those are the two big things that I hope the book accomplishes.
No, thank you for sharing. And that's I can only imagine what it was like, coming and not knowing, and everything was so much filled with uncertainties, and then how you continue to pursue. I think your mother and father gave really strong, great values that, and empowered you guys to like push through no matter what, right?
Mm.
And I think I guess that's, I guess what was the most empowering point, I guess, about sharing your story? And I guess the second question is, what has happened since the moment that you decided to start sharing your story?
Well, I have to step back from that for a minute. I think I said to you, I knew that we had escaped, but I knew none of the details of this escape at all. My parents never spoke about it. I never asked questions about it. My focus was on becoming an authentic American girl. As we came, we were this strange little refugee family, spoke no English, only German, in a town where there was absolutely nobody like us. So I just wanted to be like all the other girls, and that was my focus. And my parents were focused on making a life, going forward, trying to build a life for our family. And really encountered a lot of challenges and a lot of hardships along the way, but they were very determined to do that. And they did not talk about the past. They didn't talk about what had brought us here and so forth. So, not too many years ago,
Yeah.
I think maybe at this point, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, my sister called me one day. She lived in Annapolis, Maryland, and we talked regularly about our families and so forth. And she called and she said, I've got something amazing to tell you. And I said, well, what? What is it? She said, I found a journal that our father had kept in the run up to the escape and throughout the escape itself. A journal. I had no idea this journal existed. She sent me the journal. It just sent shockwaves through me to hold it in his own handwriting, and to read it. I learned so much about the escape itself and how horrifying it was, how totally terrifying it was for my parents, to go on this 17-day journey on a train from Berlin through Lithuania, through Russia and Siberia, China, Korea, and finally to Japan. And then from Japan across the Pacific Ocean to Seattle, at which point here we were in America and my father had no idea what next. I learned so much about my parents' character, as you were saying, and their values, their courage and their bravery to go off into the unknown in this scary, scary time when the train was stopped 14 times. Each time the train was stopped, they had to show all of their documentation. They were petrified that they were going to be taken off the trains and God knows what would happen to them. They didn't know. And they had this little 2-year-old toddler, so they were so courageous, so brave, so determined, and had great perseverance. They were going to make this work one way or the other. And interestingly, they were so optimistic. They came upon all kinds of hardships and challenges and what have you, but constantly were optimistic, hoping for the best, working toward a good life. And they were very resilient. There were definitely bumps in the road, and they kind of pulled themselves together and just kept going forward. So when I read this, I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, these are all things that I'd never even thought about regarding my parents before. As I said, I was trying to become an American girl, and I thought, I never want my children to be as ignorant of what had come before them and what kind of makes us all what we are, as I had been about what came before me. So I thought I really have to take a crack at writing this down, and writing down not just our escape and my father's journal, but also the story of my own life, some of which, I mean, of course they all lived through it, but some of which they didn't fully know and understand and so forth. So that was sort of the inspiration for me to write my story.
Wow, I was getting goosebumps, just going back, hearing about your father's diary journal, like, writing down his thoughts and sharing that experience, showing you a picture of what it was like in those circumstances in those days. And then, just trying to empathize with how when you receive that and not knowing that side of your father and your parents, what they were going through and the challenges. I can only imagine. And my humble experience with that was basically my father used to write me letters all the time because he was in Taiwan and he would write constantly. He would be on business trips at hotels and write letters. But he wrote on these. I don't know if you recall back in the hotels in the 80s and 90s, the papers were very thin.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so he would write on those, and when he wrote with strength. So it was like almost like carved into those papers.
Right.
And I think last year I found one of the letters and I opened it up and I was just stroking the, how he carved into the
Hmm.
paper, and I just felt like, yeah, I'm just trying to relate. I felt like your father was, although different walks of life, not to compare, but I just felt like it's just so emotional and so powerful that
Oh, yes,
you could
yes.
find.
My father wrote so evocatively. I felt, I just felt the experience of being there. I had no idea my father could write. I had no idea. And he wrote in such an evocative, emotional way, really just drew me into the experience. I thought, oh my goodness, I I just didn't know this about my parents at all.
Yeah.
Um, so it was quite and emotional, as I say, sort of a stunningly, shockingly emotional experience.
Yeah, and I just yeah, and then just to think all our lives, many of us not knowing the journeys of our mothers and fathers and what they were like, because honestly speaking, we were all babies at one time in life, little children, and then
Right.
growing up, right? And then marry or not, like you have kids or no kids, you go through a lifetime, and then you age and you come to this different place in your life, right? And then it's like a full cycle of it, right? So I just think that's so powerful and beautiful. Um, I wanted to kind of go into focus about how have you chose to continue to stay in this state of empowerment and positivity over the years, because I know that there has been a lot of setbacks, not only experienced by your family's journey to America, but yourself as a woman in those eras, like it was 1950s, 1960s. So maybe we can chat a little bit about that, about your education and your leading to your successful career and uh,
Sure.
yeah.
Um, as I said a while back, my mother impressed upon me from a very early age, uh, sort of her principle that guided her life. And she thought it was something important for me to know as well. And that was to dream big, to work hard, and to never quit. And that's kind of been a guiding principle for me throughout. I didn't always think consciously about what I was doing and where I was going next and how I was going to overcome some of the obstacles that were in my way. But I always understood about dreaming big, working hard, and not quitting, just keeping at it, and understanding that sometimes it takes time to get to where you want to go. And sometimes it's not an easy, smooth route. You have to sort of take twists and turns before you get there. But that was a guiding principle for me. You want to talk a little bit about my education and,
Yeah,
and how I got into the business world.
yeah,
When I graduated from college, uh, I as a woman in those days, we didn't have a lot of options. We could either become teachers, nurses, typists, or get married. And none of those options really appealed to me at that time. And so I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I had always worked and I'd always liked making money. And I thought the business world was kind of interesting. And I heard about a program that was being run jointly by the Harvard Business School and Radcliffe Graduate School. Now, this was a time when women were not being admitted to the Harvard Business School. It was a male only school. So there was this totally separate program run by the business school with exactly the same classes as the first year of the business program, exactly the same professors, but it was not taught on the Harvard Business School campus. It was taught at Radcliffe Graduate School. And I applied to this program and I was very thrilled to get in. And, I had grown up in this tiny little town in Southwest Washington, Chehalis, Washington. And then I went to college in Walla Walla, Washington. So my world was very, very narrow. I didn't have much of a world view. So off I went to Boston. And it was the most wonderful, mind opening experience. All the history in Boston, the culture, and meeting all these people, bright, uh, committed people from all over the world. It was just fabulous, and uh, you know, getting a sort of an education in the world of business, which I thought I knew a little bit about, but I realized right away I didn't know very much about it at all. So it was a wonderful learning experience. So once I sort of finished my program there and graduated, I knew that I wanted to go into marketing. And to go into marketing, you sort of had to be in New York. So again, you talk about courage. I I had no money, I had no job, I had no place to live, I had no nothing. And I thought, well, I've got to take myself off to New York and see how I can make this work. So I packed up my bags and I got on the train from Boston to New York, and I had no place to live. So I had to leave my suitcase in a locker at Grand Central because I had no place to put it, you know. So in those days, the newspapers used to run want ads, and those were ads, you know, that sort of delineated all the available jobs. And I got the newspaper and I circled the jobs that I thought I might be all right for. And again, you know, to have a career path in marketing in that era, and in any era actually, you know, the stepping stones to building a career path were to get into product management or brand management, and those jobs were just closed to women. Women couldn't get those kinds of jobs. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? I want to go into marketing. So I kind of went through the back door into market research. And I worked for the then Vic Chemical Company, the makers of Vicks Staple Rub, which we all know and probably have used in our lives, Formula 44 and all those other good brands. And I became a market research trainee. And oh, I loved it. I just loved it. I was learning a lot. I got good feedback about my performance. I thought it was just great. And I was there for about a year. And I thought, well, it's time for me to go and talk to my boss about my career path development and compensation and that sort of thing. And so I made an appointment, went in and sat down across the desk from him and very nervously said, well, Tom, you know, I've been here a year. I'd like to talk with you about next steps, you know, about my career path and where we go from here. He just stared at me for a minute, and then he just threw back his head and started laughing. And I said, well, why are you laughing? Oh, he said, there is no career path. I said, what do you mean? He said, women, they get married, they have babies, they leave. I said, Tom, I am going to get married and I am going to have babies, but I went to business school. I want to have a career. Well, he said, I can't help you. There is no career path here. If that's what you want, you have to leave. And so I did. And from there, I found my way into the advertising business. And oh, from day one, I absolutely knew I was in the right place. I just loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. It was this great combination of storytelling, strategic problem solving, creativity, collaboration, all the things that I just loved and I really thrived on. So time goes on and I'm enjoying my job, doing well, and I find that I'm pregnant. Gotten married a few years ago, and I was beginning to show a little bit. So I thought, well, I better go and talk to my boss about this and tell him what my plan is. So again, I made an appointment, went in and sat down across from him. His name was Val. And I said, Val, I have great news for you. I'm going to have a baby. Oh, he said, I'm so happy for you and Jim. Congratulations. That's just wonderful. And I said, well, let me tell you my plan. I plan to work until the baby is born, take a few weeks off, and then I'll be back. And his face just fell. Oh, he said, no. I said, what do you mean? No, we don't do that. You don't do what? We don't have maternity leaves. Well, I said, Val, but my plan is to work until the baby is born, to take a few weeks off, and then to come back. Well, he said, I can't help you with that. I'm going to have to go to the higher ups. Oh, I said, thank you very much. That's great. so he, so he did. He went to bat for me. And I mean, I had to wait for a few days to hear from him. And I was nervous about what was going to happen. Was I going to get fired? As many women did in those days. They got fired, you know, when they were about in their 5th month or so. So he came back and he called me and he said, I've got great news for you. He said, tell me, you have a maternity leave. Oh, I said, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. That's just great. Oh, but he said, I've got to tell you, you won't get paid during the time you're out. And we can't promise you that you'll have the same job when you get back, but you will have a job. I said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And this was a very big deal. This was a big, prominent advertising agency that I was working for. And really to have sort of carved the pathway for all the women who came after me was a very big deal. I really felt very good about that, and very thankful to my boss, whom I saw many years later when I was being given an honor of some kind, and I was thanking the people who had helped me along the way. And I mentioned this story, and he was there, and he came to me afterwards. He said, I don't remember that at all. And I said, this was such an important thing in my life, and you don't even remember it. So anyway,
No,
that was
yeah.
pardon.
Oh no, I said that's amazing. Yeah, how you changed and paved the way for other women, and to that particular boss, and thanks to him, being receptive,
Very much. He went to
advocating.
bat for me, which was great.
And I also want to give a notice and kudos to people that help and support others, right? And you don't have just to be a woman or or any of sort of the same group to be able to advocate and help others. So, and I wanted to kind of go back on the part with the woman and pregnancy. That is still very true. I think even to this give modern day, I think like some of the women that I've met at work in the past when they're pregnant, they're kind of shy of saying, even though we have mat leave kind of thing, but they don't want to,
Hmm.
kind of startle the group or like to be noticed, until it was like for sure showing and you can't have
Hmm.
it anymore. So I think possibly a lot of that has, been attributed from what's happened in history, right? So their mothers, and all those women before that. So I wanted to share and thank you for sharing this snippet of pioneering the maternity leave for that company because I think it's of importance how much that made a huge difference and other situations and for other women in the workforce because it has definitely changed how that is for the global workforce for women, right? So
Oh, yes, absolutely.
in terms of significant gender gaps in the labor force participation, I think about 47.7% from the World Bank's data are actually women. And so I think some of the changes that have evolved that I've observed is that just over 50% compared to 80% for men. Okay. And in 2024, women in Canada, I'm in Canada, so I looked at Canadian stats. So they earned 89 cents for every dollar that is earned by men annually. And then only,
Well, and that's so much more than it used to be, you
uh,
know?
yeah,
I mean, it still isn't where it needs to be, but it's much more than it used to be.
agreed. And what do you recall what it was uh,
I think it was in the 60s.
in the 60s? Yeah.
I
Well,
think so. I think
um,
so.
and it's been enough decades that it's still under a dollar.
Right, right.
And
No, progress has been made in all these areas, but we're not where we need to be. We have to keep on pushing forward.
100% agreed. Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, there's based on the stats, it's showing that there's 27.1% of women are managers and leaders, and that's recent stats. So for you to have achieved that, shatter through the glass ceiling, like that's like phenomenal, and I want to touch on a bit about mentorship. I think even as of today, as we speak in different industry, women seem to have challenges in terms of accessing mentorship, right? So, for example, based on the stats that I was reading, women are less likely than men to have training paid by their employer in the last 12 months, for example, right? So I just feel like that's why I emphasize, her stories untold because I feel it's so important to empower, uplift, and inspire. But at the same time, in all these talks together, where I'm being very much inspired by you, and then you're offering mentorship not just to me but to everyone, like all the audiences that are watching her stories untold live talks, right? So I just kind of wanted to fast forward to come to modern times in terms of the stats for women in the global workforce. Um,
Right. It's critical, critical.
it is very critical. And, and you were sharing that you did VIX and then you joined this company, you pioneered the mat leave. And I think I wanted to talk about maybe your tenure and time at Gray's advertising agency. Like yeah, tell us, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Oh, yes, yes. No, I worked for Gray Advertising, now part of the Gray Global Group, and I I had been at my former job in the advertising agency that we talked about for about 5 years. And over that time, I obviously, followed what was going on in the advertising business and gone to a lot of conferences where I heard speakers and so forth. And I saw that Gray was just doing extremely well, bringing in one new account after another. And I wondered what was driving that, what was giving them that competitive edge, that enabled them to build their portfolio of accounts so massively and so quickly. And I, as I said, I went to a number of conferences where I heard one of the key executives at Gray, whose name was Alvin Achenbaum, was a real pioneer in this world, talk about Gray's approach to advertising. Now, the way advertising used to get made, mainly by men, was that a bunch of people would sit in a room and sort of brainstorm ideas and what have you. And I worked in the consumer products area, most of which were bought by women. So the men sometimes asked their wives what they thought, or their secretaries, but it was sort of from the gut, so to speak. It wasn't based on any knowledge, really, fact-based knowledge about the consumer. And what Gray had figured out was that to have a real competitive edge in its marketplace, it had to kind of figure out new innovative ways of measuring consumer attitudes. Now, this was a time before that sort of thing was being done at all. Now it's sort of par for the course. But, Gray figured out new kinds of measurement and analytical tools and techniques to measure consumer attitudes, to understand not just who they were demographically and how they behaved, but what were their attitudes, what were their wants and needs, their hopes and dreams, their worries and concerns. And out of an analysis of all that kind of hard data, Gray at that point really developed communication strategies and brand building strategies that really were extremely effective in helping our clients build their brands, build traffic to their stores if they were retailers, build their business. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to do that. This is a company that values the kind of work that I've been doing and that I want to do more of on a bigger scale. So I thought, I'm going to try to get a job at Gray. And I finally got an interview with a very nice woman whose name was Betty Coombe. And she and I talked and we sort of connected very well. And she said, well, Barbara, I really like you. And I think that you do well at Gray, but you just don't have the right kind of experience. You've been doing research to find out, does one ad do better than the other in terms of being remembered, in terms of communicating its message, in terms of being liked, but it's all about the ads. What we do here is we try to figure out the front end of the story. What are the ads supposed to be doing in the first place? And for whom and against whom? And what is the message that will motivate these people to move forward? So she said, if you go out and get a job where you can get this kind of experience and do it for a year and come back a year from now with that experience under your belt, I'll hire you. Well, I was very lucky because one of my colleagues at my former agency was just about to leave, and he asked me to come and be his assistant and do exactly this kind of work. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I really did not care for working in this place at all. But I thought I've just got to stick it out for a year. And exactly a year later, I went back to Betty Coombe and I said, I've done it. Spent a year, got all this experience. Here I am. She said, you're hired. And that was the beginning of my 30-year career at Gray, which was fabulous, just fabulous. Loved it. We accomplished wonderful things. And, I love the whole concept of using fact-based strategies to really conceive of advertising approaches and marketing approaches. And of course, we tested advertising and we monitored our efforts and all that sort of thing. But the important thing was that we were trying to figure out up front, based on facts, what should our strategies be.
I think that's amazing that, and you hit a really key point here about fact-based strategy because that hits home with the people, the consumers, because
Mhm.
they can relate to, and it's something of truth, right?
Well,
And
it's all about their truth. You're absolutely right.
yeah, and then that's why if it speaks to me and it's my truth, then I'm gonna go for the products. And on a side note, I think of movies, that leaves a riveting effect afterwards to the audience are stories that are usually based on true stories because people want to see
Oh,
that, right? Yeah. So
interesting. Yeah,
yeah. So and obviously it's those stories are not usually produced for marketing, but I'm just saying I see there's a correlation to that, it's
absolutely.
because
Right.
as humans, that's kind of we have these social behaviors and patterns and whatnot kind of thing. So I think that's a key point about that strategy. And I yeah I just yeah I give kudos to you for having that courage, tenacity, sticking it through, going to do a job 1 year to be paid and learn, so that you can go to Grace and join up. And I'm glad like that whole thing worked out. And I wanted to know as you journey through, Grace, what type of campaigns did you guys do? Like, yeah, at the time.
Well, the first big project that I worked on
Yeah.
was for Kool-Aid. And Kool-Aid is a brand that of it's a powdered soft drink that was, very popular in
Yeah.
its day as a drink for kids. Uh, and it was only available to buy in the summertime.
Mm,
When school was out, the Kool-Aid salespeople went around to the grocery stores and put up their racks and put Kool-Aid up. And as soon as school started, they came around to the grocery stores and took the racks down. Kool-Aid was an extremely profitable business for General Foods, the then General Foods, now part of Kraft. And they were an account at Gray, and they came to us and said, we really want to figure out how can we expand our business. This is such a profitable business. How can we do even more with it? So we did sort of the first ever piece of consumer attitude research with moms to help really address this question. And we learned a couple of very important things. We learned, first of all, that while Kool-Aid ostensibly was prepared, you had to mix it up with water and so forth, was prepared for children. Once it was in the fridge, in a pitcher full of Kool-Aid, the lion's share of it was actually drunk by adults. So, the question was, the more we can get it prepared, the more that's going to be drunk. So the other thing that we learned was that people really were kind of annoyed that they couldn't buy it all year round. Well, where was it? They couldn't get it. Once school began, it was gone. So that was another very important thing. And then a crucial thing that we learned from moms was that they had very mixed feelings about Kool-Aid. They loved preparing it for their kids because their kids liked it so much, but they felt kind of guilty about it because they didn't think it had any nutritional value. I mean, it didn't have any nutritional value. So we had a few key implications from our research for the Kool-Aid management team. Number one, sell the brand year round.
mm,
Sell the brand year round. Number two, for moms, do a separate complementary campaign. It had always been advertised to kids, to kind of generate interest in their wanting their moms to buy it and prepare it. But we said, do a campaign with moms, but put vitamin C into Kool-Aid, and then you can tell moms that actually it does have some nutritional value. It has vitamin C. So the Kool-Aid management team, I remember this was the first big presentation I'd ever made at Gray, and I was so nervous. Oh my gosh, my palms were sweating. I thought, oh my God. And there was dead silence in the room, and then everybody burst out in applause, and they thought it was just fabulous. And they implemented the changes that we recommended that really came directly out of this big piece of consumer attitude research that we did. And their business just began to thrive. I mean, it was always a good business, but it went to a whole new level. And Kool-Aid actually became the number 3 soft drink in America after Coke and Pepsi. So that was a huge, fabulous success. Wonderful.
That is amazing success. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
recall Kool-Aid, and I remember seeing people using Kool-Aid to dye their hair.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
So,
yes, yes.
so if you didn't have lighter hair color,
That was not one of our implications.
yeah, exactly. But it was fine. I'm just like Kool-Aid was such a fun thing. Like the
Yes.
advertisement was like
Yeah.
such an exciting, adventurous life, you
Well,
know?
and the
Like,
Kool-Aid man was crashing through walls and all this sort of thing. Yeah.
yeah,
It was,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it was a great story.
It was absolutely a great story, and it was like it was really fun. Yeah, it was joyful, and you could find
Yes.
adventure through it. So I felt like if you drank the Kool-Aid, that's what your life is going to be. Anything can happen. So that was the one
Great.
adventure part about it. Yeah, and I think you there was also other campaigns that you did with makeup. Did you want to touch on that?
Well,
Yeah,
when I first came to Gray,
yeah.
uh, Gray, one of Gray's really very, very important accounts was Revlon.
Hmm.
And this was an era when, you know, the whole look that women were striving for was kind of a very glamour, almost like a mask like glamour, larger than life look and feel. And we did a lot of advertising over the years for Revlon, in that vein with that look. And eventually Gray and Revlon parted ways, and years later we had an opportunity to work with Procter and Gamble on the CoverGirl uh, cosmetics line, and this was interesting. This was an era of the movie Love Story. I don't know if people remember that, but it was when Ally McGraw was very young, and she was very beautiful, but very natural looking.
Hmm.
You know, makeup really made her look, brought out the best that she could be of herself, and we said that natural look is really what today's women are striving for. And so that led to the development of a campaign that, to some extent, I think is still running today. Easy breezy CoverGirl, beautiful. And Nikki Taylor was one of the models in those years long ago. And lo and behold, Nikki Taylor is back in CoverGirl advertising today, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just great.
Yeah, she's an extremely beautiful girl. Woman,
Gorgeous,
gorgeous,
gorgeous. Yes.
gorgeous. And
And very natural looking.
yep, absolutely. And I recall those ads, and I felt like every time we see women in ads, no matter what they are and what they're advertising, they're pretty much they're role models. So I felt
Mhm.
like that naturalness, like the girl next door, that's exactly what the girls were striving for, the type of makeup, the foundation, the powders that they were selling for, the lipstick colors. And it's kind of a different look in comparison to makeup, the makeup industry.
That glamour mask kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
right now, that's exactly it. Right now we have this glamour mask, right? Because I think the way people perceive makeup and beauty, it has shifted. So back then it was the natural look, right? As you
Mhm.
said in Love Story. But I feel like right now they've evolved to kind of like this is makeup as a tool where you can create artistic, looks, what you
Sure.
vision to be. So it's kind of different, yeah. And I do recall as well Revlon, they usually advertised back in the days, like in the 80s, 90s, like really beautiful women like Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, and all those beautiful women. And I think the slogan was like the most unforgettable woman in the world. Where Revlon, I think that was the one. Yeah.
Mm.
So that was a different lifestyle, I think, campaign in terms of like, wow. So if I use Revlon, I'm gonna look like glamorous, like
Elizabeth Taylor, right?
yes, yes, yes. It was stunning, right? Yeah,
Right,
Cindy
right.
Crawford, right? Yeah, like
Glamour larger than life. Exactly.
yeah, and
Exactly.
everyone will remember me.
Hmm.
So that was a yeah, no, thank you for sharing those campaigns. Um, Yeah, I felt like, and I think in essence, I think there was a part where that I thought was unforgettable was, like, I think Bloomingdale's, like, how yeah, because
Right.
I mentioned
Yes.
it because I go to Bloomingdale's, and I'm sure everybody is now, and we see just as it is right now, right? So and
Mhm.
that wasn't the case before, right? So
Well, Marvin Traub was the chairman of the president, I guess, of Bloomingdale's when Bloomingdale's he was a creative genius. He was an absolute visionary, creative genius, and he hadn't really worked with an advertising agency before to do creative work. You know, they did media placements and that sort of thing, but never creative work. So Gray was assigned to work on the Bloomingdale's business at a time when the store, under Marvin Traub's leadership, uh, just became the it place to go in New York, to go and see and be seen. And celebrities would go through Bloomingdale's, Jackie Kennedy, Lyndon, Lady Bird Johnson, Queen Elizabeth, and Prince Philip. I mean, it was just the thing to do. And he really had all these ideas in his head and was fabulously successful. So, just a funny story. One of our colleagues, he decided, he really needed to kind of bring whatever this modern marketing thing is into Bloomingdale's. So he hired a former colleague of ours from Gray to run the men's store. And the first day that this fellow was there, he called me and he said, "We have to do a big strategic study to help, provide the blueprint for the future development of the Bloomingdale's men's store." I said, "Arthur, does Mr. Traub know that you're doing this?"
Mhm.
No, no, he doesn't need to know. I said, I just knew that Mr. Traub would not want to be doing this because he had been very successful kind of going with his own instincts and his own gut. I said, "Arthur, I don't know. I'm not, no, Barbara, we have to do this. We have to do this." So we put together a kind of a killer proposal to do this piece of research that our former colleague wanted. And my supervisor and I, a woman, we marched over to Bloomingdale's, went into the boardroom with all of our charts, and got all set up to make our presentation. And Mr. Traub walked in with a whole group of women who were his executives. And I just have to laugh when I think about it. They all wore hats and they sort of looked like 1930s movie stars. And and they sat down, and our colleague, who was supposed to be kind of introducing this whole thing, did not say a word. He sort of sat in the back and didn't say a word. And so my supervisor and I just sort of stood up and started to make our presentation. We put our first chart up and we said, "Here's the reason why we're here today, and here's what we're going to go through." And he said, "Let me stop you. Is that why you're here?" And we said, "Yes." "Oh," he said, "let me save you some time." And he stood up, and all the women with hats stood up and they marched out. And our former colleague did not say word one. and, and we just laughed. We said, "We've seen a lot in our time. We've been through all kinds of all sorts of things together. And this was just kind of a first." But I wasn't surprised. I knew he wouldn't want to do this.
Yeah.
I knew he would not want to do this, at least at this moment. So anyway, just a funny story.
It definitely is a funny story. Thank you for sharing that. So that's why I was laughing too when I when I've heard. So yeah, just kind of like in reimagining the whole situation, what you guys were feeling and what that was like. It was yeah, it was definitely funny. So having gone through this, having balancing this amazing career, I read that, and and thank you for sharing again. Some of the challenges in regards to taking care of your family, your husband, and then how were you able to maintain this high power career and at the same time take care of your family? Like, yeah.
Um, Well, first of all, my husband and I met in business school. He always knew that I wanted to have a career, and a lot of people said, "Will your husband let you work?" I said, "Well, he lets me work, and I let him work, and it's not a question of who lets whom work. We just both have careers." But we were very, very strong partners, always, right from the get-go. And when we began to have children, he was always very involved with the kids. And that was probably a little unusual in that era. But we were really strong partners. We were strongly agreed that our key goals were to really build a strong family with a close knit family with really strong bonds, and to have success in our careers. And somehow or another, we were going to work together to make that happen. And it meant that we probably would have to not do a lot of other things that might have been nice, but that was what we had to devote our time to. So we had three sons. Our oldest son is Michael, and then we had identical twins. And so it was a pretty wild and woolly household, and pretty rambunctious,
Girl.
but a very close knit family. And as my sons now say, when they reflect back on it, they say, we really laughed a lot and we had a lot of fun together. My kids were very knowledgeable and involved in what Jim and I did in our work, and very interested in it. Now when they talk about it, they say, a lot of what they learned was through osmosis from the discussions at the dinner table or the breakfast table and so on. So I think, the way it worked for us was that we were together in terms of what we wanted and what we were striving for. And we worked as very strong partners to make it happen. Someone once asked me when I was talking about this, they said, "Well, were you ever stressed?" I said, "Yes, every day." Yes, of course there was stress, but somehow we worked it through together.
Those are very important points, and I think as women today, like uh, generally speaking, I think it's often quite a balancing act into maintain a relationship and then partnership and then getting married and having a career or not, right? So the fact that you share some tips there is having a strong partnership, having a strong shared common goal and vision, right? And then working hard
Mhm.
together to respect the space mutually to allow those things to grow and then see where we can come in to support. And of course, like you said, your kids, like raising these three outstanding sons, right? It's like they're a part of you. It's
Yes, yes.
and you were constantly without intention every day, like in everyday conversations, everyday moments, they were learning, and it was a teaching moment kind of thing, right? So I just thought that was really beautiful and really inspiring, because a lot of times I think in life perhaps we think we can't do it, but there's definitely sacrifices, as you mentioned, but to acknowledge the sacrifices, but then still continue to keep going no matter what, right? So I thought that was so important to touch on. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, and then I wanted to, ask about I think your sons, Michael, Peter, and Dan, right?
Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just thought that their journeys were all different, but it was so interesting, and they constantly work together to help each other out, and then they were always there, and you built the bond of what you call the steel bond, right, with your whole family
Hmm.
network, and I thought that was so powerful and strong, and then how they support each other, and instead of fighting, they're always kind of there for each other, right? So
Well, they fight a little bit, but
and they play
by
jokes
and
on you.
large, it's a strong relationship. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a wonderful. So I wanted to ask you, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be? Like Barbara right now, like if you had to meet your
Uh,
younger self.
it's really the same thing that I've been saying.
Mm,
Dream big, think about what it is that you want, and then go for it. work hard, work like crazy. And sometimes there will be bumps in the road, and you're gonna have to be creative to
Yeah.
figure out how to get over them, how to get around them, how to get through them. But do that, work at it, and never ever quit. And that's really what I would tell my younger self and what I tell my older self.
And everybody else, yeah.
Yes,
Yes, that's great.
exactly.
Not just not just what one can take from that, right? So, and I think very importantly, how has sharing your story, writing your story, affect your journey, your transformation journey? Because I know you went through, of course, different phases in your life, right? So, how did you, what do you feel before and after, like right now?
Well, I, I think I told you when I found this journal and I read this journal and I sort of realized that I wanted to write the story down so that my kids and grandchildren and future generations would know what came before them. I thought, but I don't know how to write a book. How would I do that?
Mhm.
I have no clue. I mean, I've been in business all my life, and I've written hundreds and thousands of business communications, but never a book. What do I do? So I had to kind of learn how to do that. I talked to a cousin of my husband who is a novelist,
Yeah.
and I said to her, I really want to try to take a shot at doing this, and I don't even know how to get started. And she wasn't very helpful during lunch. And then just as we finished lunch, she said, I have an idea for you. Oh, I said, great. What? She said, I think you should get a coach, and I have somebody you should talk with. And she mentioned she had taught at Yale, and this young man had been a student of hers at Yale and was a writer and an editor and was actually teaching writing now at NYU. So I called him and I told him my situation, and I said, "Do you think you could be helpful to me?" He said, "Yeah, I think so." So we worked together for about 3 months. He came to talk to me for 3 hours a week, three
Wow.
hours each week.
Yeah.
He recorded our conversations and then developed transcripts of those recordings. And he also gave me homework assignments every week. So at the end of this whole 3 month period, he had this huge binder
Yeah.
of all this information. And he said, "This is really the generative phase of your writing your book."
Mm.
He sort of pressed me to sort of reflect and remember and think about the implications of certain things that had happened in my life. And I said, "Well, Keith, but now what do I do? I have well," he said, "Now you write your book." And I said, "Oh." So he said, "Maybe I can help you. Maybe I can work with you on doing an outline, which may not be the final outline of the way your book comes together, but it'll be a way to get you started." And so he did that. And once he did that, I knew that that was not the way I wanted my book to be, but it was the trigger that got me going. So I had people from various parts of my life who really encouraged me and supported me along the way. A lot of people thought I had a very interesting story. And I kept saying, "Well, yeah, but I don't know who'd be interested except for my family." And they said, "No, no, no. This is an important story for other people to know about because you can educate and inspire people." So I'm very thankful to everyone who helped me along the way and encouraged me along the way. Uh,
And yeah, and I'm very thankful that you wrote the book because, like I said, your journey, like a lot of times people think, oh, it's nothing. It's just my life story kind of thing, right? But it's so powerful. And what I've been hearing through is like there was fear, maybe not knowing what to do or how to write a book, for example, holding you back, right? Or even when you were a young girl, not knowing what to do, all the uncertainties of the future, but you still push through, and then but along those journey, it's also, the people that kind of is there to be able to support you bits and pieces, right? And then so it gives one a courage to continue to make a step here and take a step there further kind of thing, no matter what the circumstances are, right? So,
mm,
and I feel like,
true.
um, how do we, I guess a lot of times, especially right now during this era of great uncertainties in a different style compared to historical times, I feel like a lot of people are experiencing self-doubt in their life and career because it has shifted from, I think back in the days, if you work hard, you could slowly evolve, right? But I feel like right now everything's changed, it's technology, like AI and all that stuff. Not to say those are bad changes, but it's just the world, how
Different, yeah.
different world, right? So what kind of tip, like, how would you say, how do we continue to support and offer support to others if anyone's having self-doubt in their life or career, for example? I know it's a complex question looking for a simple answer, which there may not be, but I just thought we'd talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think you have to sort of take baby steps, and your question reminds me of when I was. This is like way off base, but when I was going to remodel my apartment, and I hadn't really taken anything out of my apartment or gotten rid of anything for 40 years or something like that. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is an overwhelming job that I have. And one of my friends wrote to me, and she had moved a lot. She said, listen, don't think about the whole thing. Think about one drawer at a time. And I thought that's really a good piece of advice. That's a good life lesson piece of advice. So I think when you're overwhelmed, I still believe that dreaming big, working hard, and not quitting is the underlying principle. But I think, try and think about what you want one step at a time, and then really focus and concentrate on that and go for it. And maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. And if it doesn't, then go back and rethink it and come back and give it another try. I think that's what it takes. Determination, perseverance, but as much clarity as you can bring to your goal, even if it's like the first step in your longer goal. What is it that you want to have happen?
So really think about those big points. And I kind of want to shift back very quickly to touch on what your mother had shared. She said, dream big, work hard, never quit. And always understand and appreciate, as you mentioned, the power of education to open doors to opportunity. Be honest, tell the truth, walk the talk, and be proud. Be yourself. Don't act. Have high standards and don't settle for second best. And do your best. Always strive to be the best you can be. Be nice, be generous, spirited. Always think the best of people. Understand and be careful with money. And when you come up on bumps in the road, and you will pick yourself up and move on. This is a quote from your book. Yeah. So I just,
Right, right, right.
yeah.
I can hear my mother's voice.
And that's such a great message for all the people around the globe to help us navigate through life, to push through setbacks, and and have build courage to keep going forth, right? So, yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to share that information, and as well, I with all the support that came in, I thought it was very empowering. Like I was a bit emotional when I was reading the part about your son, how he talks about Jim, the dad, helping them become great fathers. Like,
Oh, the
yeah,
best, the
the,
best.
and to quote here, he says, the best thing I like to say about Jim, your husband, his dad, he taught us all how to be good fathers. And you thought to yourself, this is as good as it gets, because what more could a father ever ask? And I thought that was that like, well, it was a short little snippet. I just thought it was like, wow,
Oh,
it's so
me
true.
too. Me too. It made me brought tears to my eyes when Dan said that.
Yeah, I just and I felt like that's why, aside from your values and you raising your children, I just thought that the fact that they've all been Peter becoming so successful, being the president of the Milwaukee Bucks, and then Dan taking over to lead the Trevor School that he loves
Right,
to teach, and then as well as Michael, he's also the chief content officer as this online healthcare startup, um, and as well as pursuing his dream in theater and writing and stuff like that. I just thought it was
right,
just
right.
yeah, so that's why it's so
I'm a
important.
lucky mom.
Yeah, and they're lucky to have very fortunate to have you and Jim, of course, and all the people that have been there in their lives to support them. Yeah, it's just too rich to capture in one live talk.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So no, thank you. And I guess, who do you think should read your book?
Well,
Yeah.
I think young people definitely should read it. I think it's, as I said before, you know, it's an important educational piece
Yeah.
for young people, and young women in particular. I hope read it because I want them to be inspired to really go after their dreams, and to know that it's doable. You know, it can happen. Dreams can become reality, and I think that people with Jewish backgrounds are also going to be interested in my book
Mm.
because it really talks about so much that's been important in that whole world of you know, the Holocaust and the aftermath of the Holocaust, and how how different people have sort of dealt with it and come out well on the other side, let me say. Uh, and then I hope book clubs read it because I think it should stimulate conversation. I mean, we've had a lot of conversation today, and I think there's so much more conversation to be had. So I hope book clubs read it as well.
Yeah, and very well captured. And I feel like your book is also educational, you know,
Mhm.
part of the thing about pushing through setbacks and glass ceilings and where to go with your career and to try things out even if it fails, and that's okay. And then the balancing act of being a wife, a mother, right? A powerhouse career woman, and then at the same time learning the dance of maybe sometimes saying no because things change as circumstances evolve in life, right? And then learning to be there to support your family no matter, the challenges of health, and of course in life there's death for any one of us in this whole entire globe, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
yeah, so I think people really should read this book because I feel inspired, further
Good.
inspired and empowered, and to be honest, I felt like it gives you a sense of clarity. Like while we may not be doing what you have done or are still continuously, pursuing and then doing, I feel like there are so many moments and tips, um, and insight that we can take in order to leave with so that with these tools so that we can lead a really strong and powerful.
Oh, good, good.
uh,
I'm so glad to hear you say that. That really is very gratifying to me.
yeah,
Good.
so yeah, made the right choice. So, is there anything you want to add in terms of sharing perhaps like other projects or programs that you're working on?
Well, let me tell your audience that they can learn more about my book by going to my website, Barbara Feigin, FEIGIN.com. And of course, they can buy my book wherever they buy their books. And I hope they do, and I hope they like it and enjoy it. And I hope they're both educated and inspired by having read it.
Yeah, it's that's yeah, and that's perfect because I'm also being going to reshare your links too at the end of the talk, and
Wonderful.
so that everybody can reach out to Barbara. And at the same time, I think we kind of reached the end of our live talk here today. So I really want to thank you very sincerely. And once again, I wanted to stop here to momentarily to wish everyone a very happy Chinese New Year. Today is the Chinese lunar calendar date, the last date, which is December 30th. And it is technically the Chinese New Year Eve. So maybe some of you might not know, but just sharing here very quickly that it's Chinese New Year is actually considered one of the most important holidays. So extending to some other East Asian countries as well. So the reason why we celebrate this Chinese New Year, what we call Chinese New Year, is to honor our ancestors and pray for good fortune, reunite with families, enjoy various customs and traditions. So they can include interesting things, culture note, like cleaning and decorating the house with red things. So you always see red in the grocery
So
store.
red, right?
Yeah. And are you wearing a red shirt today?
I'm wearing red for Chinese New Year.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for that. It looks beautiful with your necklace. And yeah, and then so some of the other things we do is we offer sacrifices to our ancestors. We might do it through prayers and going to a temple, for example, or eating a family reunion dinner on New Year's Eve. And very importantly, I think parents or adults, they usually give red pocket envelopes filled with money to kids. Um, yeah, so it's actually to do with wishing, abundance of good luck and good fortune for the new year to come. Yeah, so yeah, and then I know lion is an important thing for you because of gym. So I talk about there's lion and dragon dances, right? So to usher away the past and to invite great positive energy into the fresh new year. So anyways, thank you everybody for your time. And most importantly, thank you so much, Barbara, for joining her stories untold today.
Oh, it's been wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wish you a beautiful brand new year. And yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for your connection. And yeah, and for everybody else that have missed the live talks, I will be sharing the links again for the recorded session. And yeah, and the links to Barbara will also be shared. So thank you again,
Thanks.
everybody. Thank you, Barbara.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye bye.